Welcome, Jonathan, to the show.
What up?
Thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it. I think, one of the reasons I thought of you to have on the series is because you have such a broad set of experiences, and all of them are creative in some capacity and artistic in some capacity. So I guess just to start, were you always a creative person, like growing up when you were young?
I grew up around musicians and dancers. I'm not sure that I was creative in practice always, but because I never really saw it that way. I guess one now as an adult, I would say yes. But I started playing music when I was a child, mostly because it's kind of like what you did in our family, and it was like the easiest. It was more like vocation.
Mm.
I guess the short answer is yes, but I'm not entirely sure that like I ever, I think I came into like being creative or being a musician more like just something you do, like you cook, you read, you go to school, and then you also do this other thing that's just like part of daily life. So it
Yeah.
was like kind of always integrated. So I never kind of like categorized it as being a creative. And I think as a child, I just thought everyone else was this way as well.
Yeah.
Now as an adult, I figured out it's not that way. But yeah. So I guess I was creative when I was a little kid. I think I was more mischievous in silent ways,
Yeah.
which I think is like a through line as a creative to this day. I like to mess with things and challenge, and I think I've always been that way.
Yeah. And your instrument of choice, drums?
It was drums, hand percussion in specific. So I started playing. I started on redungum, tabla, kind of which I'm from a Mexican background, but these were kind of like Indian Carnatic instruments. And yeah, I played hand percussion all the way up, through high school, and then I started gigging. I think professionally at that point, or a little before high school. So that's kind of where like the being a creative as a job melded together. And
Yeah.
I think ever since then it's been, it's kind of odd that you pointed out. I don't really see myself as, as like a creative.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I guess every industry I've been in is creative. And so it started then, I think, and then transitioned into playing drums, like actual like kit, it all came out of necessity. I
Mm.
think like being creative is like, it's like life in that it's demanding and that it never stops
Mm-hmm.
and that you need to feed it. And if you don't, it gets away from you. I think a lot of my creative practices have been, stem from survival, really. Like, this is how I know how to, you know, pay for rent. And, it's not like the cool, sexy, like, this type of thing. It was more like I think I need to eat today.
Yeah.
And how can I do that is to make something.
Right.
And that's how my entire life has been.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you came to it early in high school. So like gigging starts in high school and then you start to realize like, oh, I go play and I get paid and
Yeah.
this
Yes.
is like how the economy works. This is great.
Yeah. I'm not entirely sure I would like promote this as like this is how it should be,
Yeah, sure.
because I think it creates different kind of like you start to view creativity in different ways. It's funny, me as a musician is separate now from me as a creative today and what I do. And I think a lot of it was like I had to break that cycle of like I play and then I eat, and I
Mhm.
think that created a kind of an unhealthy imbalance. So I think a lot of musicians, especially doing the things that I was doing. So I was a jazz musician, and I also played top 40 gigs. So it would be one day I would, be playing with Nelly Furtado somewhere,
Mhm.
playing tambourine to Like a Bird. And then the next day I would fly back to the States and then I would be playing, YMCA for a bat mitzvah. And that was my life. So it was kind of ups and downs, so it played, it definitely like removed the ego,
Mm.
out of creativity. Like it completely demolished that. It was not about, I am this and my work is important and
Yeah.
I have something to say and everyone must hear. It was never about that. It was just more like I'm here to support the flow of whatever creative endeavor I was, at that day.
Yeah. And maybe, I mean, maybe that's like a good thing, I would say, because I feel being in the commercial world, it's the same. I think you get weathered in a way that kind of teaches you that, like, if you can remove the ego out of it and you can just serve the creative
Mhm.
flow, actually that might be where the best work really starts to happen.
Yeah, I think you know, my work today is in the really in the marketing field, and that really kind of like centers me, and it kind of gives you a compass, and it
Mhm.
has nothing to do with you. It
Right.
has everything to do with everyone consuming it. So I think that you shift. You don't like my personal taste is in there, but it is like an amalgamation of what I think like the people who are going to consume it at the end, like what they want to see as well, so it's collective in that way.
Yeah, yeah. And it sounds like consolidated experience too. So like all of your experience in these different formats over the years kind of set you up really well
Oh yeah.
for like what you do now. Which if you can provide some history there. So you start out on percussion, that moves to like kit drumming, and then
Mhm.
do you go to school for jazz?
Yeah, I went to Berkeley for music, music business really, but I spent most of my time, trying to survive and playing gigs and things like that. And then after college, I come back and I just try to essentially use the network that I had,
Mhm.
and then from there you start to kind of get bigger gigs. So I started touring and doing that type of thing, and I would really it was any gig that paid, so which really kind of broadens the way that you approach kind of what you're making.
Mm.
So it's like you were always having to, pull one day I'd be playing, a R&B or a neo soul gig, and the very next day I would be playing a gospel gig, and then it would be like, oh, now you have to play rock and roll. Like, I would have to really separate myself from what I wanted to do, like my personal taste again,
Hmm.
and just deliver whatever was, whoever was calling me. So it kind of you start to approach creativity in I think a very different way, than maybe an artist working in their own studio, or an art director at a fashion place where they're like very much like tasked with doing like one specific thing, and
Mm.
their personal taste is like the taste. I am very much it's slightly more democratic. So I did that for a while, for a really long time, and I got a little burnt out on it.
Mm.
And so I started to look at, where do I look next? And I've always loved fashion. I was like, okay, I'll work in fashion. And turns out that no one can just show up anywhere and be like, give me a job, give me a corporate job
Yeah.
working in this thing. So I took some advice from my now wife, who is like a deep collaborator on a daily basis with me. And she was like, okay, well, I'll support you. And you go and work on the floor. That's the only way that you're going to learn like what fashion and retail is about. So I basically, again, removed all ego, worked on the floor, and then worked my way up. And then I found myself in a place where I never thought I would find myself in. So I started working at something called CRM, which is like data. It's data that you use for clienteling in the fashion space, at least in this specific kind of way that I started working in it. And worked my way up, and that's how I got into like marketing for on the retail, like the luxury retail end. That afforded me a couple of opportunities, and then it's gotten me to where I am today. So I work for a company that oversees a vast network of businesses that are like kind of consumer, based essentially. So they're all hospitality, food and beverage, and retail.
Hmm.
And so yeah, I went from like musician to data guy, and then from data guy to like marketing dude. How a creative asset worked or didn't work was solely at first base with data, and
Hmm.
then that gives you kind of a different like path to being like, hey, this is working, this isn't working. Again, another tool to like remove my ego. I'm starting to realize now
Yeah.
there's just like a lot of like basic removing yourself from it, and then being like, what do people enjoy? And then all of my then you make decisions that way. And so I was able to like give feedback first on emails, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and then from emails it goes to the hero image, and then you're like, okay, I think we should, if it looked this way, it might inform the message better, and then, so it's grown into what I do today,
Yeah.
which is now quite varied, so on one day it'll be, art directing a fashion campaign, and the next day it's looking at budgets and P&Ls and data, and then the next day it's designing a menu for a bar, and then or talking to speaker builders. At the present moment I'm working on a project that you're talking about audio and how to best have someone come into a bar and listen to it. So in an odd way I'm now back in music, but
Yeah.
in
It's
a
almost full circle.
yeah, in a completely different way though.
Yeah.
Which now it makes me love music much more than I
Mm.
think I did.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, and I think one cool thing about your experience is that the collaborative aspect of removing your ego and then working with all these musicians and everything, like you're doing rock one day, pop the next day, jazz the next day. Um, it kind of becomes this thing where you're just serving the integrity of the thing that's being created rather than serving some deeper ego-centric thing inside of you.
Right.
And that collaboration, I think, is what like all of a sudden gives you this great skill and tool set in where you are now. Because what you do now, I'm interested to get your perspective on that because it's so varied that, like you said, one day you're designing a menu for a restaurant, the next day you're are directing a fashion campaign, which we worked together on, which is a wonderful experience, and then the next day you're working on this concept that you're developing really from the ground up, which is the hi-fi bar. That varied experience, what is it like switching gears like that? Like how do you maintain sort of your flow?
Well, I think I'm a iPad kid, I think. So my brain's always, ping-ponging in different ways. So I think I have found myself in a situation that suits my kind of attention. Luckily, I work in an ecosystem. So all these businesses and all these human beings behind them, they all kind of work with each other,
Mhm.
So, and the person who we are trying to attract, in essence, is the same person, the same type of person. I don't think that what I do for on the fashion side is that different from what I'm doing. Let's say if we're working out programming for, a high fidelity space, they're still talking to the same type of human being,
Mhm.
and that human being is also like us. They're curious, and they always want to see what's next. They also want to be reminded of what's happened.
Mhm.
They want to be surprised, and they want to escape from, like, I think, daily life. It does remind me that maybe I should have a more organized attack.
Yeah.
But I'm not. But yeah, it also forces me to pull from different references, and continuously consume media and books and art. Well, not books. I should read more, but yeah,
Yeah.
I consume a lot. I'm quite curious,
Yeah.
and I task everyone who works alongside me to be the same always.
Yeah. I think that is really maybe the cornerstone. And now I think I'm realizing now like why you and I are such creative soulmates is because I think we have the same perspective on creative problem solving, creative thinking. It's not really a targeted thing. It is definitely something that encompasses all of your experiences. Like if I'm making music in my home studio or if I'm in an edit bay with one of my editors here at work, it's all the same to me.
Mm-hmm.
They're not different things. Like I see them all the same. Kind of like you essentially see, that fashion campaign, that menu design, all that stuff. I mean, it really is this kind of
Yeah.
even plane of expression or whatever it is, whatever the messaging goal is that we're trying to do. So that's really interesting that you have that perspective. And then curiosity, I think maybe that is the thing that really is probably the best tool in the toolkit for creativity is continuing to be curious and go out there and try and find experiences based on that curiosity.
I think creativity in what we do is just trying it, just do it, try it.
Uh-huh.
I see many people who, or the one thing that immediately turns me off to another creative when I see another creative person would be if they don't want to try it, they prejudge the imagination.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we see it all the time.
Yeah.
It's like we try to set up a shot, and someone might be like, in verbalizing the shot, they do not like it. And I think that's like the number one thing. It's like you're not curious at all what's going to happen. You know, it's like
Yeah.
even if you think it's going to be, you know, I think when I see a glass at the edge of a table and
Yeah.
push it, I think maybe you're one of two human beings. I want to keep going to see what happens. It's like my instinct.
Yeah.
And some people want to push the glass back
Right.
to save it from falling, and are not curious to see what might happen.
Right.
Because they think they know what's going to happen.
Sure.
And I'm more like, how far can that glass go?
Yeah. How far can
before
you
it
push
falls?
it?
Yeah. And when it falls, can we shoot it in slow-mo and see if it looks cool?
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
Yeah.
and that's, I think, that's just curiosity. I think that's like, I'm super curious about things.
Yeah.
And I think everyone who works in our field or any creative field should continue to be curious. Because if not, then you just rely on your personal taste. And I think personal taste is the very beginning, you know.
Yeah.
You know, I hear a lot of like, oh, they're so good, they have great taste, and you're like, yeah, but that's just the beginning, you know.
Sure.
That's what you have innately in you, that's your instinct. But if you don't foster that instinct with curiosity, then how's it going to grow? And how do you innovate, or how do you propose new questions?
Yeah. Yeah, that innovation piece, and then developing new intuitions, you know, as you grow that curiosity really is a cornerstone, I feel like, of creative thinking, creative problem solving. And that can be in any field, right? Like, not necessarily in creative industries, that could just be any field. I'm just curious, how do you find inspiration? I feel like you're really good about going out there, having experiences. I know you travel a lot, you and your wife. How do you find inspiration and sort of dig up those things?
You know, creativity is like the force, right?
Yeah.
The force is out there, right? And not everyone's a Jedi or a Sith, first and foremost, right?
Yeah.
Some those who have an innate connection to it, but even they have to work to grasp it. But it does not belong to you in any way. You know, it's just something that's out in the ether. It's kind of how, like, you see, let's say in fashion, you'll see designers design the same, you know, they come out and it's like what we call trends, you know.
Yeah.
But that's, you know, the end process of a very long process of like picking materials and textiles. But even the textile people at some point have all, like, in the ether, have decided that this one color is what is striking them today.
Mm-hmm.
So I think creativity is that way, and it's like the force in that way. And I think the references and the things that I come upon, I think I view in the same way. So it exists out there, and some of it reaches out to me. Some of it I conjure, and then the rest of it is just diving deep, you know, or going down, following the hole, essentially. And that gets you into some other things where I get really inspired by little things, you know, so daily life things, you know, so I'll get curious, you know. It's actually the only way that I leverage, you know, AI or what, you know, Chat GPT is the only way that I currently use it. It's like super search. It's just like I get super curious.
Right.
I'll type in a prompt, and then from there, if it tells me it comes from this book or whatever it may be, then I go and look for the movie or search the clip or whatever it may be. And, you know, so that's, I think, how I find a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
Is, you know, if it's a TikTok that shows up, or I watch a movie and the movie references something else, and then I get curious, and then you find out that director, you know, was really into some sort of pottery, and then you get curious about the pottery, and then you just keep following the big, you know, yellow brick road, essentially.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it converges with what you need to make that day.
Right.
And if you can pull from it, you pull from it. And sometimes you force the reference, you know, and
Sure.
something new happens.
Yeah.
You know, because as much as I venture out to remove the ego, sometimes it still exists. You know, I can be cantankerous at some sometimes, especially if I feel steadfast in an idea. You know, so I think that's when I force things, and sometimes I fail. You know,
But that's kind of where we learn, or that's kind of where we gather some new piece of knowledge. Like you said, even if you pull the thread and fail, at least at the end of it, there was some experience and something happened, and you're kind of like, oh, that was interesting, even though this final thing we didn't really want
Yeah.
anymore, but that little thing was interesting
Hmm.
about it. And I'm curious, like I love the analogy to the force and creativity basically being the force, because one of the things that I have personal experience with you, like you and I collaborating on, film projects and things like that for fashion campaigns, our source material is usually not like tears of other fashion
Hmm.
campaigns. It's usually really not anything literally having to do with fashion. And I'm curious to get your thoughts on, why do you think it is that when we go out there and we pull from references, what we're pulling from is like story, films, all of these things.
Yeah, well, I think I don't like being literal, so I do not think that if I'm working on a fashion thing that I'm going to find what's next off of what has already been done.
Right.
Mm. And I do not think that the if I were to go to that to that source material, I don't think that those photographers or designers or anything were using other people, or not their references are broad,
Right.
because they lived their life, and they're basically pulling from that, unless they're like referencing a specific, you know, they're referencing another campaign, or they're referencing another silhouette or whatever it may be, but it's still informed by something else as well.
Yeah.
So I think I don't know. I think there are much cooler things out there, from any walk of life and any sort of industry, and nothing is off the table, I think, for us or people like us.
Hmm.
So I think usually that's why we end up with a reference or like a starting point that is not in the industry that we're like, trying to market.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. And I think it kind of calls back to what you said earlier, where those broad inputs, right? The things that you're experiencing, all that kind of creative force that's coming through you, um, that really is sort of the best practice, rather than basically pointing at something and saying, like, let's just make that.
Let's make that. Yeah, it's so boring. I think one of the advantages of the modern age, especially for people who do things like, what the industries that we're in, is that we have to produce so much. It's maybe part of what some might think is killing our industry,
Hmm.
but I see it as like this huge advantage that we're able to fail more, and we're able to recoup faster. So I think that's what's cool about it. I had a drum teacher who, in the drumming world, it's called ticking. If you tick, it means like you've made a mistake.
Okay.
So they're like, if you tick loud, always. So if you fail loud.
Yeah.
Like, don't be embarrassed about it. And I think what's cool about what we do is that we have to produce so much. We can fail pretty loud, and then we can recoup pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And it doesn't put the weight of everything, on one singular asset or creative piece.
Right. Yes.
That's what I think enables us to pull from other different things, and be like, okay, I'm going to use this movie reference,
Mm-hmm.
that has nothing to do with fashion, and I'm going to try it. And if it fails, then, we'll try something else,
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
so I think that's what's cool about what we do, is that we're able to, like, we have to put out a whole bunch, so might as well. Our work is about the amalgam, not about the singular,
Yeah.
So I don't think when we die, I think they'll just remember whether we were good or bad.
Yeah, sure.
And they might reference some small things, but I'd rather they just be like, oh, they were good. And I think the way that you get there is by putting out as much as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. Learning, changing,
Mm-hmm.
evolving.
Mm-hmm.
That's really interesting. It is definitely a conversation I would say we've started to have more and more, even with our clients, which is essentially what you're saying. And I think it's interesting that you kind of reference this perspective, but the number one, the stakes of failure for a singular asset or piece of content these days is very low stakes. The stakes aren't that high,
Mm-hmm.
mostly because there's so much content filling the universe and filling the digital universe that it's like your one asset is just a drop in a very large bucket.
Mm-hmm.
So it can fail and everyone will forget about it. And even, you get your data from it, what worked, what didn't, move on. Very simple. But also that the narrative form of the content, like you said, it's the amalgam of all of it that you're aiming at. So don't focus so much on the singular piece, the one thing you're creating this week. That one thing should be a part of a long string,
Absolutely.
which is a really interesting perspective. And from a marketing perspective, especially since you worked in data, you came through that data facet, so you have that knowledge and you have that skill set. But now working, at the top, being a creative leader at the company that you're at, how do you factor in those data points at the same time as keep that broad perspective?
Well, you separate it. I constantly get reports, and I'm like, okay, well, where are we at year to date?
Sure.
And a lot of people will want to focus on the singular month or the performance of a singular thing, and I'm like, okay, well, let's broaden this out and then see where we're at, so that you don't get demoralized quickly. That can happen.
Yeah.
So that's my first, from a data perspective, is like always show me year to date, show me big picture, and then we can go down to the small picture. And then if we have to adjust, and if it doesn't, if this small thing in the entire equation of what you're trying to do only plays, a percentage, a very small percentage, then maybe let's chill out a little bit on this. Like maybe this failed, and I'll take the data points only to better the next thing, but not to harp on what didn't work and how, your whole year will fail or whatever. So I think that's how I approach from a data perspective. I'm always looking at the whole first,
I see.
and then if it doesn't work, it only informs the next. But I do not try to dwell on why that particular thing didn't work, because I think that's, you just can you can run in circles all day.
Sure.
Trying to figure out why and how this is going to ruin your life or your work.
And then from a data perspective, there's something that you said one time that really stuck with me, mostly because, to give some, I guess, perspective there in our side of the industry, because we're not really collecting a lot of data. We're just making the thing and handing it over. And usually it's another company who's collecting that data. And we get on these calls sometimes with these companies and they tell us, you're looking for this type of hook in the first 3 seconds. You need to do this, you need to do that. And it really is a list that, just like if you Google social media best practices, that's like the list that it's just going to give you at the top of that search. And there was something that you said to me that I thought was great, which was, don't pay attention so closely to those things. Make the content that is fitting for your brand and fitting for your message, and don't worry about that stuff, because that really is the way that the organic traffic will develop. So when you're looking at data points, how much do you allow the data or the targeted sort of pieces of that data steer your content production?
I bifurcate it. There's a portion of it that is meant for performance, that I say, okay, I'm doing this type of thing, this type of ad, and this type of creative to support the ad and what I need to get out of it. And that is for performance. This other portion is just to say, hey, I'm another human. I'm trying to find, a human who has something to offer you. And I'm trying to find other humans just like it and who like it. And so those are so you separate them. You start to see, and at that point you're like, okay, and we say this is top of funnel. This is up here. This is brand, So we start to kind of dispel the notion that needs to give you some immediate KPI. It has a return. And then, I satiate the commerce portion with it, with ads that are very much targeted to make sure that you do something and you shop with us, or you dine with us, or you book an event with us, or whatever it may be that we're trying to push. And some of it, sometimes it's, it's 80-20, sometimes it's 60-40, sometimes it's, 90-10,
Sure.
And you kind of approach each thing differently. But I think that's my first thing. It's let's separate these two ideas and what serves what kind of goal, essentially.
Okay.
But I think they work in tandem, And on the advertising world, you're building, campaigns that are layered. They're not just like, here's a video and I'm expecting to get a gajillion dollars out of it.
Yeah, sure.
Or here's a video and I'm expecting hundreds of people to comment and be like, oh my God, I love it so much. What a great story. Like that's also, you have to kind of like, there's a balance that you're looking for,
Mhm.
and it's ever changing. And I think from a business perspective, it changes to the business needs. And sometimes you're like, I'm okay in a space where I need to storytell now. And sometimes the business needs to sell. So I shift the ads and the way that we speak to things and the copy, not just me, I'm not a copywriter, but our team that we work with and my lovely wife, who I work with on a daily basis,
Mhm.
who is a much bigger and better creator than I will ever be. We shift those things. And so we strike balance in that way,
Mhm.
and I think you start to, from whatever you get from the data, then you start to be like, okay, this really performed. So whenever I need to pull that lever, I do this. And whenever I want to pull this other lever, I do this. And whenever I feel like the brand or we need to tell this story, for whatever reason, it might be just cultural. Like, I think this is the right time to say this thing because out in the ether, out in the force, this is moving,
Yeah.
so I need to tell this, and then you can make those decisions. So I think I use the data in that way. And then at some point you stop using it. You have to, we're all just humans at the end of the day. So you have to use your intuition to a certain degree, or collective intuition. It's not just me,
Right.
you're tapped in, I'm very lucky to at present day to work with a whole bunch of people who are super tapped in. So it makes it easy.
Yeah.
Some people don't have that though. So
Yeah.
they're either lone wolves and they have to do it themselves, and they have to tap into a form of bravery that sometimes, people like us don't have to on a daily basis, or vice versa.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. You mentioned a couple times, and I'm in the same boat. So I work with my wife every day. So we go to work together every day. We run a business together, and then we go home together at the end of the day. That for you, just tell me how do you guys work together? Do you work together well? What's that collaboration process like?
We work together pretty well. She is the VP of creative at the company that we work with, and I'm the VP of marketing there currently. It's funny. Usually creative and marketers, or, people in creative and the marketing worlds, are at odds with each other. I'm not saying that we're perfect or we're without, some sort of friction, but man, we work really, really, really well together. And we've been working together. I think we're coming up together maybe like 5 or 6 years, but at the same company almost 8 years. And we've been collaborative with each other, even if we weren't working. We're sounding boards for each other.
Right.
And my wife Michelle is in that I have my references. Man, she has a wealth of knowledge and so much to tap into. So I'm very lucky that every day I have that sounding board.
Mhm.
She is like a consummate creative in that she has a workflow, she has a process. She sees a creative problem and understands the workflow for it to achieve it. It's not so clear for me every day, and she provides clarity in that way.
Mm.
So yeah, in many ways I get to do the things that I do because I have a collaborator, but also I have like a mentor in that way. And it's really weird because I've never really found that as a musician. I didn't have someone
Interesting.
as a musician. I mean, I had several, but none this great.
Right. Sure.
So, and then we find a balance at home, and we say, okay, now it's time to not speak about creativity in our work.
Yeah. Yeah. I was gonna ask, do you have like a good life work separation?
Yes, yeah, sometimes, and I rev up on things.
Uh-huh.
So I'll start revving up, and I think she can tell when I'm in that space, and I think she's, we balance out each other when, if we know our tells.
Mm-hmm.
So then we start to be like, okay, let's bring up another thing, or let's talk about this, or let me ask you about, what we've got going on this weekend or whatever. So we try to find that balance,
Okay.
and I think it's practiced at this point. It's years now of doing it. I feel very lucky every day, so I don't take it for granted, for sure. So she's the best collaborator. I highly, I don't know how you and I both got so lucky in that we love working with our spouse
Yeah.
and our person, and I don't know a lot of people who can do that. How do
Yeah.
you do it?
I don't know anyone. I don't know anyone else really who says that they can do it. But yes, I am in the same boat as you. I'm lucky enough to do it every day. I think I would probably mirror a lot of what you said. I think a lot of what I accomplish is because Jessica has a much clearer understanding of like the process, the workflows, how we're going to get there, how we're going to stay on target. And she also just has this ability to calm you and center you, because I'm the same as you. Like I'm constantly taking inputs and then expressing my
Do
outputs.
you find that, you know, uh, as you were saying about workflows and stuff, I find that what I think is impossible, she thinks is possible,
Yeah.
and vice versa, I
Right.
think. And so I think that's why maybe it works the same for you,
Yeah.
and that I'll have a big idea and, it'll overwhelm me. And I think she knows, okay, this is how you can do it. And sometimes she has a big idea and, we work together
Yeah.
in that way.
Yeah, that sounding board and that collaboration process, not only in work but in life, um, really makes a big difference in that the skill to be able to communicate clearly within a relationship, I think is already a challenging thing. So being lucky enough, being in the shoes that we're in, to have spouses, partners who do have a great sense of communication, are very wonderful people, but at the same time, extremely smart.
Mm-hmm.
That just puts people like you and me in a great position
Yeah.
because
Mm-hmm.
that communication skill gets reciprocated, and there's
Maybe it's the same Irving, Arlington, Texas. Because
there's
I will be.
something in the water.
We should mention that both of our wives, they went to school together,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, they went to college
Yeah.
together,
Yeah.
yeah. When we met, it was kinda like, "Oh, yeah, this is interesting." Like, you're
Yeah.
curious just like I'm curious.
Yeah, I'll tell this story because I think everyone should know that the first time I ate with Roger and Jessica was my first, maybe I think my first like home cooked vegan meal. So I hadn't really had one. And then Roger said that it just a drop of this in the middle of dinner. I was like, this freakazoid just said that one day we were going to upload our consciousness to the cloud. And I think at the time when we were talking about this, the cloud was like, people saying upload it to the cloud was like a new thing. It wasn't really like in daily life, you would talk about uploading things to a cloud.
Yeah.
And I was like, it struck me. So I never forgot it. And look at us here. We're here today. And I do think that our consciousness might be uploaded into a cloud one day.
Yeah. Yeah, closer and closer all the time.
Yeah.
That's funny. When it comes to workflow, because you are collecting all of this amalgam, you have the collaboration process with your team.
Mm.
Just walk me through what your creative process or what your process to approach a project is like. And you can use any reference you want. It can be a fashion campaign. It can be like the concept you're working on now, developing a new bar. Um, but once you've gone out there and you've collected and you have this idea and you're like, okay, I know I need to produce this thing.
Mm-hmm.
What's your steps?
Well, I keep a note of ideas. It's just one long note on my iPhone
Okay.
that just has tons of rando ideas, or I hear someone say something goofy or funny or that feels like interesting to me.
Mhm.
I'll write down the phrase, or if there's a book, there's a list of books that I'm like, I'm going to read, and it's taken me forever to read Dune, Messiah. That's like a year now.
Yeah.
Which I highly recommend.
All right.
I can only recommend up until, maybe 200 pages, but but those 200 pages are fantastic. And I've definitely used references from that. I also am do not care. I'm like a dilettante. Like, I only know a little bit about this thing,
Mhm.
and then I will take that and then like, explode it or like zoom into it,
Okay.
So that's generally how I'll approach the initial idea.
Mhm.
So I'll take this is this creative solution or creative problem or the equation I need to figure out. I'll say, hey, can I plug in any of these references that I already have? Or do I ask someone, do you have an idea?
Mhm.
You know, I'm very much at this point, because we have to make so much of it, it doesn't have to come from me.
Right.
That's a really important,
Mm.
I think a lot of people in our positions feel like they have to be the one to come up with the idea.
Right.
Uh, there's ego in that, you know? So if someone else has an idea, and then from there, I'll dive headfirst into zooming in. So like, how furiously fast do I have to dive into this
Mhm.
enough to get the product? Then from there, let's use a fashion campaign as like an example.
Mhm.
From there, you dissect all of the different levers you need to pull to make it a reality. So if we need to build 3 sets or 2 sets. We recently did one where we had to build 2 sets.
Yeah.
You build those 2 sets, and then I need to get the models. I need to coordinate the fashion people to put all the looks together. I need to talk to the production team, your team, to be like, okay, what are we what's the vibe of this? You kind of reach out to all the different players, and then you let them cook. You've given the force to them. You've allowed them into this thing, and then you have to let those people do what they do best. I also like a tactile kind of approach. For my process, I have to be tactile. Like, I have to touch the thing and make the thing,
Mm.
um, for me to feel good about it. Then you've coordinated. At this point, you're more project manager than you are like directing or making the creative in that way. And you're there to support and make the thing happen. The fashion stylists, the hair and makeup people, the
Mhm.
camera people, the gaffers, the lighters. I think it then becomes my responsibility to make them feel comfortable, to not get in the way of communication. We've talked a lot about the camera and the model.
Right.
And that I think art directors and creators, some are very like, and I'm sure you've worked with some, are very like present
Yeah.
in their direction with, for me, it doesn't work. I don't think I get the best results from that.
Mm.
Because my daily life does not consist of being behind a camera and instructing another human being on it. So how could it's like, I'm a drummer and I show up and I want to be the guitarist. So then I
Right.
tell,
Okay. Yeah.
and
Sure.
or I tell the guitarist, this is what you should play. It's just not what I do.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I guess my drumming informs my process, because drummers are also, they're there to keep the time. They're there to keep, the sections working.
Right. Yeah.
You have your verses, you have your bridge, you have your chorus, and then you have your ending.
Yeah.
And a lot of the job for the drummer is to do that. So I think very much like I used to do as a musician, same thing, for kind of our, let's say, a fashion campaign. So, and then you just hope that the song sounds good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we live in the digital age, so their editing is everything. And, if I have a clear vision, then, I think I lay out most of the things. And you work with me, so hopefully I'm saying what I think is happening is truthful.
Yeah. You're telling the truth.
I lay out everything up front,
Mhm.
So most people who know me, I do not, I tell you the truth, and I tell you how I feel, and I tell you up front. And if you do that, then, I think usually the product you get at the end is going to be what you envisioned.
Yeah.
So I think idea, find your cooks, let them cook, be vocal about what you want the dish to be, and then you'll get the dish. I think is kind of my approach to it. And I think it's the same thing for every project I have in whatever space.
And I think that's interesting because I think the analogies you're using really speak to the fact that it is that broad perspective that really hones in. And if you're a chef, it's all these cooks in the kitchen, it's your team, and you're pulling those levers to get the dish that you want. Even if the dish isn't exactly the same as
Hmm.
you originally thought,
Hmm.
usually it's better in the end
Yeah.
because everyone kind of adds their thing.
But that's the force.
Yeah. Yeah, like you said, that's the creative force.
The force had something else, and sometimes it's not what you think. Sometimes it's better. Sometimes it disappoints you, but elates other people.
Right.
And at the end of the day, if what you're trying to do is to get a reaction or a positive reaction from the outside world, then that's what really matters.
Hmm.
It doesn't matter what you thought it was going to be. What
Yeah.
matters is the reaction and the interaction with what you create.
Yeah. Yeah. And it kind of reflects the same sort of learning that you gave earlier, which is like setting that ego aside,
Yeah, yeah,
right? It's like, don't, even if you feel disappointed in the end and everyone else has a really great experience with it, then maybe it was good.
yeah.
Maybe your perspective doesn't really matter at that point.
I think from if I'm pulling from what being a musician informed what I do on a daily basis, it was essentially as a drummer, I was just there to make you dance and drink, and which means no solos, which means playing the thing, which means maybe the tune you don't dig as much, but I think that's always what I'm trying to do, and I think that's really why I ended up in marketing, and I consider myself a marketer more than I do a creative,
Hmm.
I reserve that for people like Michelle, like my wife, but I think that's where the marketing portion comes in,
Yeah.
and what separates what we do or what I do from like a painter.
Mm,
They don't do it for the same thing that they don't do it for the reasons that we're doing.
sure.
Not all of them, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the team aspect is also a little different. Like obviously we work with teams on a regular basis and we have to collaborate with people consistently every day. Whereas a little different for solo artists. Like if you are a
Yeah.
singular painter making a painting, that's a whole different thing.
Hmm.
Um, but I just love how the analogy you gave for being a drummer, keeping time, focusing on the arrangement of the song. And what it really calls to is like almost being focused on the composition in a way. So it's less focused on these targeted details or expectations and more focused on the composition. Like, hey, team member, like when you call me, you give me the broad-based portion of your idea. Like, here's what we're aiming at. Here is sort of what's running through my head. And you hand over that creative force and say, like, okay, now you take it and go run with it. And then that exchange happens a couple times before we get to being on set, actually doing the campaign. You and your team have created the set, the sort of like foundational idea. Once I've brought my stuff to it, then of course you and I start doing it on set together where it's like you have an idea, I have an
Hmm.
idea, and then we just mix this stuff all day.
Yep.
And then like you said, it translates to basically the way the camera interacts with the talent or the models on a fashion campaign. That becomes a thing where it's informed by the idea, but it's also informed by the team,
Mm.
like the camera operator that we bring on. What are the intuitions that he or she might have that we didn't see, and making sure to leave room for those discoveries,
Yeah.
I think is really important. Like you said, it's don't be so particular, don't be so delineated with your idea. Allow the room for some organic things to happen, some accidents,
Yeah.
because a lot of times those accidents really are what end up in the edit.
Yeah. And I think also it's what keeps you from becoming stale. I think,
Hmm.
if you approach it that way.
Yeah.
I think if you approach it from like I think it's easy to feel the weight of responsibility.
Mm.
And I think that's why people sometimes it's not about ego, it's about the responsibility for this thing to be good is on one singular person sometimes.
Mm.
So then the way that they react to it is by taking ownership over the entire process.
Right.
And I think it worked for some people. I think those people have very pronounced voices, but sometimes those voices can become stale. So I think it's very much I much rather the approach. Well, obviously, I much rather my own approach, because it's mine. But
Sure.
but I think I like this approach because it isn't mine. It's everyone's. It's like everyone on the team, and it kind of takes you away from it, and it helps you. So when you gotta win yourself, and when you gotta fail, it's the teams.
Yeah.
It's everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. When you think about music, when you think about art, food, all of these things that seem to be reflections of culture, that seem to be reflections of experiences, why do you feel like it's important for humanity to tap into the creative force and to make these things like music and art and great food and all of these things?
Gosh, what a crazy question. I'm not sure I have the answer for it. I think it's important because it's what life is, and I think that the um, endeavor to just be alive and try to get through life doing something, for some is a mechanic, but for some is being an artist or a chef or a line cook or a dishwasher or a gaffer or a creative director. All those things must happen for us to continue moving forward. So I think that they're only essential in that they're part of the entire puzzle.
Hmm.
And I wonder, when those things are taken away, we've seen puzzles fall apart or not be complete. So when you suppress creativity, suppress artists, or suppress, books or banned books or things like that, then we see civilization fall, right?
Hmm.
I think they're essential for us to move forward. One piece of one large puzzle.
Yeah, that's interesting. These expressions are essentially like a part of the broader humanity
Mm-hmm.
and are sort of necessary in a way for us to just continue pushing, continue evolving,
Mm-hmm.
continue being a part of just the process of existence.
Mm-hmm. And when you snuff any of those out, then you can't continue.
Hmm. That's interesting. I love that.
No, I think I'm not a historian, but
When I think about the fall of certain empires, I think
yeah,
you're probably
yeah.
right in that. One of the last questions, and I think I want to ask you this because I've seen you lead your team. What advice would you give other people out there who are, even if they work a normal job and they want to get better at creative problem solving, creative thinking, or if they're an artist and they want to improve their workflow, what advice would you give for pursuing creativity?
Oh man, I'll separate them. I'll separate the new creatives.
Mm-hmm.
I would say continue to be curious and bury your references. And for the old creatives, I would say continue to be creative and show your references so that you create this kind of ecosystem where you feed the old, feed the new, and then the new feed the old.
Mm.
You know, um, that's my advice. I think is it's these the nascent and the established. I think need to I think the best way is for us to create this cycle essentially. I think also for young people or any people is to find your networks. And I think when I was young, I thought that I would the way to get into something is to go to an established person and try to get them to give me an opportunity.
Hmm.
And I think now, instead of that being a pursuit, I see that a lot, and I'm sure you've seen it a lot. Where
Sure.
basically, like young people, or you when you were youthful, or when you were we're still youthful when we were younger, we just thought that, oh, if I could just get in front of this person,
Yeah.
they would give me a chance, right? And sometimes you got in front of that person and they didn't give you the chance, right? I think it's much more helpful just to continue to rough it out and find your network young. Find other people who are struggling, who are wanting to make things. Because eventually, what we see now, and you see it all the time, and it's our networks and other people, uh, these people who are up top have all of their friends and collaborators that have been together
Yeah.
when they had nothing, And I think so. I think finding that is essential. And then if you're established, I think trying to find people who aren't refined, but you could, basically give them a chance, essentially. And then listen to those voices. We talk a lot now as guys were getting gray in their beards that, we have a lot of youthful people. We have different generation that we work with now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think instead of stiff arming them because of differences in how they approach things, I think allowing their commentary and their feedback, and then also guiding them in how you give feedback. A lot of what we do involves, it's a two-way conversation,
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, I think hearing them when they have some sort of feedback or they give you some sort of reference, or, if they're interested in some sort of reality television show that you just absolutely abhor, I think I think what I try to do is try to understand
Mm-hmm.
why it's working and what is resonating with them. Sometimes I'll see someone like super cool and they're, they have all these cool references. They're young, and then they go and watch something else, or they consume something that is like befuddling. You're like, oh, why would you?
Yeah, like why would you like that?
Why would you like that? When you encounter that, go and try to find out why.
Yeah, be curious.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, find out what's resonating. That's interesting. Yeah. Well, cool. Well, thanks so much for
Thank you.
coming on the show. I just think that, you have a lot of really cool insights and a lot of really cool perspectives when it comes to how to operate as creative.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Our executive producers are myself and Jessica Kramer. Our producer is Giselle Saucedo. Our editors are Max Smith and Garrett Alloway. Music by Creators. I'm your host, Roger Peters. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for tuning in.